All right, ladies and gentlemen, something pretty interesting was going on with XRP right now as it stands. We have ourselves a very important XRP lawsuit update that I've got right here in front of me. Basically, the Ripple team just posted something, and there is quite a lot to unpack, but let's just start it right here. Ripple v. SEC lawsuit update. Breaking, Judge Torres has denied parties' motion for an indicative ruling, with of course a little screenshot here of the conclusion. But you might wonder, why exactly did this happen, and what does this mean for our beautiful XRP? Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me just tell you, right, that this is not a beautiful thing. This is not nice, this is not good, and that is also why the price went down 5% almost instantly. But the better question is it fair? Now, in my own public defense, I don't think a lot of what's been happening in this lawsuit has been fair at all. I want to walk around, but sometimes it's better not to. But you can quickly see just a little snippet of what the villa looks like right here. But I guess let's just focus on the most important pieces. Here's Fred Rispoli, who's shared a very in-detail argument and reasoning explanation about all this. He's an attorney, trial lawyer, etc., etc. He shared a very important update, but I think it's first important to see what Ripple's own team said about it. They said, with this, the ball is back in our court. The court gave us two options: dismiss our appeal, challenging the finding of historic institutional sales, or press forward with the appeal. Stay tuned. Either way, XRP's legal status is not a security, remains unchanged. In the meantime, it's business as usual. So, well, let's just quickly go ahead and read the major post. SEC v. Ripple. This is a long post on my thoughts here, but the TLDR is, and this is for all the people that don't like to talk about this for too long, welcome to the new SEC. For now, more or less the same as the last one, and Ripple and SEC will settle the appeal for the reduced agreed upon amount and leave the Torres judgment in place, while the SEC will publicly or privately communicate to Ripple that it is not restricted in its business operations, with Ripple transparent about those operations and demonstrating how they no longer fall into the category that was deemed illegal by Torres. So as far as I understand, the TLDR here is that we basically have a new SEC, right? We have new rules, we have new people, everything. But the judge basically did, in my opinion, a lot of work to come to a certain conclusion based on the previous SEC statements and analysis, etc., etc. Now that Ripple and the SEC both wanted to come together to state, you know what? That is all not necessary no more. The SEC basically admitted fault, and Ripple said, we're still happy to pay a $50 million fine. The judge is not willing to come back down on what she decided previously, and that is right now a bit of a problem. So I'll just summarize this so you don't have to read the full thing. The first part here, what he basically says that he would have expected the judge to grant this because there is a new SEC. So there's no real reason for her to not do that. There's only two reasons. One, she was pissed that the parties wasted 4.5 years of her time with bitter litigation. This is probably one of the major reasons. And two, she is hostile to the Trump administration and will do what she can to throw up obstacles, which again, he says both are 100% in play. She basically then, probably because of her wording, is expected to have just wanted the SEC to start begging. That's again what he basically says. It's basically because of the words that she used in her letters. And then, which I think is a crucial part as well, is that she quotes back on how the SEC first all believed that a $1 billion fine was necessary. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, as it currently stands, the SEC wants to reduce the fine from $125 million to $50 million, right? But the judge came in to say $1 billion worth of a fine. We can't do that. We can do $125 million. And now the SEC, who first said $1 billion is necessary, they want to cut it down lower. So there's a bit of a confusing part about that. He then basically states that to back it up, the SEC had multiple different people like Pierce and Atkins now to state that the previous SEC was wrong, and they have examples of where the SEC was wrong in the past. But again, the judge did not budge. He said the court should evaluate all prior pleadings from the context that our enforcement attorneys acted in a partisan manner and not out of faithful allegiance to the law, as Netburn noted herself in the case. This obviously did not happen, and there are only two reasons why. Ripple and the SEC did not discuss this necessity. I find it hard to believe that this was the case, as it could arguably be legal malpractice if the attempt was not made. Two, Ripple did ask the SEC, said, we are not making ourselves look like idiot assholes. This crappy motion on the SEC letterhead is the best I can offer. Insert pawn shop me. Because 2 is likely what happened. This tells me that the SEC is going to do what it has done for decades, protect its own regardless of its administration, in charge, or detriment to the public. If you ever want to know the types of pieces of crap that sit atop the SEC, type into your browser 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗏 SEC whistleblower and read up. All this happened under W. Bush, by the way. Also, I sue .gov agencies all the time for despicable behavior they commit against my fellow American citizens. They are all like this, and I mean, as institutions, there are some good folks fighting upstream, but they are really vastly outnumbered. This is the reason I'm so invested into crypto, to opt out of the crumbling system. Now, another reason, the SEC hasn't fundamentally changed really on the crypto front, but that will all be revealed in the appeal, is the SEC claimed it is dropping their appeal, but I don't believe that has actually been formalized. The SEC has the power to formally drop their appeal and simply not respond to Ripple's appellate brief, i.e. leaving it unopposed, thereby giving it a huge boost to Ripple winning it. But basically he sees that as 0%. The parties will drop their appeals, settle at 50 million, and move on with the injunction in place. But regardless of that, it doesn't affect XRP though, and doesn't really affect it for XRP ETF approvals either. He then basically states that in theory, the judge could come back and say, hey, they have to stop all this because it is kind of like selling to institutions, but we still like to say that this probably won't really happen. He then notes that an interesting term used nowadays is historic institutional sales, basically claiming that Ripple's practices have changed. So whatever was discussed before, it's no longer interesting. So this whole previous debacle of perhaps, Ripple not being able to do something doesn't really stand no more. And actually, a lot of that authority stands with the SEC, but I personally don't care too much about all these little details. He basically states, though, that because they used historic institutional sales, they right now are talking about it in like a previous form or past form. This signals to me that the parties are going to settle and move on with the understanding that XRP sales to institutions will be done in a way the SEC can live with. And so at the end of the day, this lawsuit kind of was for nothing. If you read all this, I'm impressed. I am also a little bit impressed by myself, but I will quickly state this. If you're holding XRP right now, there's literally, in my opinion, zero to worry about. This lawsuit is all just paper. It is all just a bit to mingle your brains every single day with more confusing letters, more confusion. But for some reason, people decided to sell XRP based on this denial. I think that's just because whenever negative news comes out, people like to speculate on that and sell. But in reality, I state that this is just a letter of it takes a bit more time to get this all done. It takes a bit more time to get to the final conclusion, but I don't really care too much because it's just paper, right? All business is continuing on, and I personally think that this season, the price will still have its crazy price spike, regardless of whatever the lawsuit status is. I don't think it's gonna matter too much no more. A matter of fact, to atone to that, or to attest to that, I'm just chilling here, right? You might think that I'm worried. You might think that I'm walking around here freaking ice bearing. I don't know how you call that in English. Just walking around, hating my life, thinking, oh, but what if, whatever. No. I've just been here, chilling on my freaking, I don't know what you call this, eating my freaking watermelon, enjoying because, well, what else can you do? In times like this, all we gotta do is wait. I buy that freaking dip every single time it gets presented to me. And if you're worried even for a second, I think the mistake lies with you. But we're making money every single day by longing the freaking bottom right now. If any single time XRP comes back to $2, I buy that freaking dip. But I personally think as well, if you're just perma long XRP, meaning you always buy or always have a position open, it's still quite hard to lose. On the short term, you may not love it, but that's what we have the bots for. On the longer term though, I still think this will become, this will be really, really interesting in the next few months. And I remind you all, if you look back at my videos from November, what we were saying, if you long XRP like a maniac, you make a ton of money. Not financial advice. Anybody who really listened though, who thought, in the November period made like a 7x because the price went from 50 cents to $3.50. If you caught that move with some leverage, the amount of millions of dollars you could have made on that is just insane. Some people did. I told you guys that somebody started with, I don't remember the numbers actually, but he just made a crazy return. Some people also messed up because they used slightly too high of a leverage. But in general, if you do not play the wrong game of going a bit too crazy, your leverage is low enough where you can maintain the margin and the price steadily but surely goes up. As long as you do not get wrecked on a massive move down by war, for example, or threats of that, you should be good, and things, in my opinion, will get absolutely insane over some time. But yeah, hopefully you guys can stick through it. You still believing in it? If you're not, let me know down below why. And that's about it for this little crypto update.